Thank you. I now recognize myself for the first round of questions. I know today's hearing is on consumer issues, so I want to start by talking about consumer safety. Senator Baldwin and I introduced emergency vacating of the Aircraft Cabin Act, the AVAC Act, to require the FAA to establish evacuation standards that take real-life conditions like the presence of carry-on bags, children, seniors and passengers with disabilities into account. Ms. Nelson, if I could just have a quick yes or no to the following three questions, I'll give you time to elaborate afterwards. First, have you ever been on a flight where there were no carry-on bags?
No.
Have you ever been on a flight, or what percentage of flights that you worked did not have children under the age of 18, seniors over the age of 60, or persons with disabilities?
0%.
Do you think FAA simulation testing is effective?
No.
Thank you. Now, can you briefly explain why it is so important for the FAA to conduct simulation tests with real-life conditions? And I just want to start by saying that the FAA's current way of doing it is to take a fuselage, put 60 people on it, nobody over the age of 60, nobody under the age of 18, no carry-on bags, and no disabilities, and they say they can evacuate, that simulates a real condition. So can you speak to why it's important to actually simulate real-life conditions?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. So the evacuation standards are not, first of all, do not take into account the current conditions in the cabin. The full aircraft, the seats that are closer together, the iPads and tablets that are out everywhere with cords, the growing accessibility, frankly, to everyone who's on the plane. And if we don't take into consideration the actual conditions in the cabin today, we are going to have a test in real live aviation where people will lose their lives. We do not want to test this for the first time in an actual event. So we need to take into consideration there are different issues that can be brought into the simulation of whether or not an aircraft can be evacuated in that amount of time. There has been concern in the past about utilizing children and elderly people and people with disabilities in the evacuation tests themselves, but those can be entered into the simulation process and at least considered. We should also be considering fumes in the cabin and any other obstructed objects and the issue of carry-on bags. None of that is considered in the evacuation certification process right now, and that is why your bill is so critically important to determine what the actual conditions are today in the cabin and how we can safely evacuate people in an emergency.
Thank you. We certainly test the safety of automobiles with crash test dummies to simulate babies in car seats and people with disabilities. So certainly you can introduce human analogous dummies into the process. Thank you.
Agreed.
Last year, my friend, former Congressman Jim Langevin, was attempting to lead a House Armed Services Committee congressional delegation when Lufthansa refused to allow him to board because its employees at the gate were confused about whether his wheelchair battery was allowed on the flight. It did not matter that the United States Navy had already confirmed with the airline before the trip that his wheelchair specifications were permissible. And confusion isn't just limited to batteries. It can also be about something as simple as what size wheelchairs can fit on which kind of plane due to varying cargo capacity. This is incredibly frustrating and frankly unnecessary. It was my friend and hero, the late Judy Heumann, who brought this issue to my attention. I am writing a provision for FAA reauthorization inspired by Judy that would require carriers to provide passengers with disabilities basic transparency and information. Ms. Ansley, if airlines were required to post basic information on their websites and apps like the size of their cargo holds, where both passengers and gate agents could easily reference it, would that help minimize confusion and make travel more predictable for passengers with mobility aids?
Thank you for the question, Chair Duckworth. It certainly would help to provide customers with more information about the experience that they're going to have during flight. Judy Heumann was a great friend to all of us, and I have had the privilege of advocating with her because she had so many issues traveling the world by using her wheelchair. And having the opportunity to know not only how, what aircraft her device would fit on safely, but also, quite frankly, working toward the goal of being able to just simply fly from your wheelchair would be a great opportunity to solve those issues.
Thank you. Is the disability community satisfied with the current level of accessibility at our nation's airports? Do you think more needs to be done in terms of elevators, ramps, accessible restrooms, that kind of thing?
Yes, more does need to be done in the airport context to improve accessibility. We hear a lot about charging stations at gates not being accessible to people who use wheelchairs, announcements that folks can't hear, counters that are not at correct heights, the accessible restrooms that everybody seems to like to go in with their luggage that require people with wheelchairs to wait until they're available. There's still more that can be done, and we hope that airports will be even more proactive in increasing access.
Thank you.